Welcome to Fintech Brews and News, brought to you by Central Payments and Falls Fintech. I'm Nikki Rohde.
And I'm Trent Sorbe.
Founders, co-founders, payments professionals, and, well, just people who love brews. This is a place to get a behind-the-scenes look at unique partnerships and ways to bridge the financial gap between banking, startups, and the entire fintech industry. Whether it's a beer, or coffee, or something else, there's certain to be a brew in every episode. After all, how do we function in this space without it? Each episode, you're sure to take away some good stuff going on in the financial technology space. So without further ado, let's grab a brew.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of Fintech Brews and News. I'm Trent Sorbe, the CEO here at Central Payments. I'm running solo today. Those of you that have tuned into prior episodes know that normally we're a bit of a duo with my friend Nikki Rohde. Nikki's not able to join us today. I'm very pleased to welcome Jario Riveros, who's the managing director of the Americas at Paysend. Paysend's a fantastic partner of ours here at Central Payments, and we're very excited to have Jairo join us today. How are you today, Jairo?
Very good. Thank you, Trent. Happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. I think the best thing to do to kind of kick this conversation off is tell us a little bit about yourself, Jairo, and then kind of work your way into Paysend and some of the things it's doing here in the United States, but really, frankly, all over the world. I'm sure the listeners would love to hear more about the company.
Thank you, Trent. Well, I'm Jairo Riveros. I am currently managing the Paysend operations in the Americas. I also run the strategy group for Paysend Global. I'm Colombian, migrated to the States, migrated to London, migrated to Canada, and recently came back to the States. So long time, consistent immigrant who has been passionate about a number of things that I have learned throughout my career. Number one, I started my years of professional activity at MasterCard, learned a lot about payments, but he was quite passionate about financial inclusion. Believed that there were a number of individuals who did not have access to the financial solutions. And in MasterCard, I work quite heavily in providing those in Latin America. Then I moved to investments and became quite passionate about financial education. Was able to focus on what it will require for someone who is able to work many years but ends up with very little savings, how that can be done a little bit better. Then I went to consulting and had the opportunity to advise investment firms and be able to create the opportunity to focus on new companies that are trying to do things differently, focus on innovation, run a fund on innovation. And when I think about those three, that summarizes why I'm so passionate about Paysend. Paysend came to develop an innovative solution that focuses on bringing people together around the world by providing the ability to pay, send, hold funds around the world among any to any, many to many. And I can bring my financial education, my financial inclusion, and my innovative passions into the company.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Paysend, but it's interesting to hear your background and how that fits so perfectly with the problems that Paysend is trying to solve as we think about financial inclusion across the world, particularly in areas of the world that just have never enjoyed what it means to be truly included in a financial system. Bring us through the journey of Paysend and maybe talk about its early days and how we get to where we are today and some of the activity you're doing around the world, frankly.
Fantastic. Yes. So 5 years ago, Paysend was funded to tackle what our founder, Abdul, and a number of us identify as the pain point in providing payments across the world. He used to own a cash and mortal cross-border a remittance company. And he realized that there were three things that were very common in his business throughout many, many years. It was, number one, slow. It required a lot of time to be able to connect the one end to the other. It was expensive because he was dealing with a number of physical locations, employees, and a number of processes. It was cumbersome. A lot of paperwork required, a lot of barriers in many ways. So when we created Paysend, we focused on how to tackle those three. And the idea was to develop a value proposition that is instant to the extent possible or as close as possible. And we believe on that because the more that we explore our customer needs, we realize that you need the funds now, not necessarily later. And in many cases, it's about your food, your education, your housing, your health. Number two, that it had to be freemium. The system was very, very expensive. How could we do it at a low cost? Not free, but at a cost that represented the best solution for everyone. And simple, to make it as simple as possible. So Paysend was developed connecting the three major card networks, Visa, MasterCard, and China Union Pay, allowing individuals to connect among themselves to fund the transaction and send it card to card. This immediately created a market of 12 billion potential users that were allowed worldwide to connect. As we progressed throughout the 5 years, we ended up connecting the ACH, the bank accounts. We then connected the wallets. We then connected the local payment schemes. And basically now we can connect any to any among our systems. But there is something important here. We always maintain that the opportunity is to remain as instant as possible, which means there are certain elements in which we probably don't operate, has to be freemium. Therefore, we don't provide cash out, as an example. It's costly and it's slow. So it's something in which we don't do. Or we try to not work with aggregators because it adds more players into the value chain and it increases the cost. And it has to be simple. Our app is amazingly simple and our application. Yes, we could add a lot of more features. We could put a lot more fancy things, but it will make it slow. It will make it more difficult. So those are the principles. Nowadays, we have reached 6 million customers worldwide. Thanks to our partnership with Central Payments, we can now send from the US to over 100 different countries, providing the ability to distribute the funds to cards, to bank accounts, to wallets. We also have the opportunity to collaborate in different moments when things are of an urgent necessity for funds like us. And I want to bring something that our audience should must know, and is that the situation that we're all currently facing between Russia and Ukraine gave us the opportunity to put what we preach in practice. How did we do that?
The situation there escalated so quickly. We were talking here internally. How do we continue to make sure that there is a good, safe flow of funds into the Ukraine? We reached out to you and your team, and you said, we're thinking about the same thing. And then Visa reached out to us and said, have you guys thought about this? So yeah, we're all thinking about it at the same time. And I think we all just recently said, well, this is simple. Let's make it free. Keep the flow going. Don't charge anything because we know when it comes to desperation funding needs, it doesn't get any more desperate than what we're seeing in the Ukraine. And talk a little bit, I mean, that's been very successful. I mean, we were very happy to keep that flow of money going there. What's been the feedback?
So, well, first of all, it was an increase on transactions significantly. But also there were a number of combinations that go beyond the fees, but the fees was the element that brought us together. We want to do something, we can handle that one as quick as possible. But for instance, many of the cards are Ukrainian issue cards that are actually operating in Poland. So Visa had to make that possible because it made no sense for Visa to charge a cross-border transaction in that. So that was one element that came into play. It was also the element of
I think that's a great point. If you think about the immigrants who and the refugees who found themselves all of a sudden across border, but they were doing it not because they wanted to. It wasn't a vacation, as we all know. So it doesn't make sense to think about cross-border fees in those situations because that was their temporary homeland and for many people. So yeah, it took a lot of fast reaction from anyone there.
Exactly, and it's not only Poland, but Poland is one example. It's Poland, it's Hungary, it's Turkey, Slovakia. I mean, it's all across Serbia. And then what happened in our case as well is because our application depends on an IP address, at the same time was not recognizing the transaction. So immediately our team went on to say, no, there are no borders. And again, it's putting in practice what we have preached. Make it as instant as possible, make it as freemium as possible, making it as simple as possible. And this is the call for action. We are trying to continue learning from that. We learn from this. A number of individuals have reached out to say, I am using now Paysend for other transactions because I see what you did. And we didn't advertise it, you didn't advertise it, neither Visa. We all went and action, which is the interesting part. We're trying to do similar things now. We believe in financial inclusion. We believe that Central America is actually the largest immigrant corridor in no war times.
You have a very large project going there right now. Talk about that and talk about where you think this might lead Paysend, specifically in Central America.
Well, it's the largest north-south corridor in the world. It's about $150 billion a year that are sent. Everybody thinks about Mexico, but let me give you an example. It's 30 billion to Guatemala. It's the largest income on their GDP outside of anything else. Now, most of them is cash to cash. So what we have to do here is, again, to start thinking a little bit different. So in partnership with the Vice President Kamales and with the Central America Public-Private Partnership, they have brought together a number of companies, including MasterCard, including Microsoft, Google, Walmart, and others, invited Paysend to be part of that equation of how we can bring some financial inclusion to it. So what happens is the following. If we send card to Guatemala, the number of cards in market are very low. We know that. Number two, the acceptance of those cards among the merchants, other places, is also very low. So that's why cash continues to be the optimal solution. But instead of just remaining on that, we have said, let's figure another way out. Paysend is going to be launching our app in Guatemala. We've been extended license from the UK, so we don't have to have a license separately with a local BIN, and it's going to be activating a virtual card. Now, that virtual card will land in the phone of the recipient. When you send, the individual gets a virtual card with the $100 that you send in quetzales. Now, how can you use that virtual card? Well, you can go to Walmart, and you can actually show your virtual card, and Walmart would acknowledge with another identification to allow, not for cash, to buy your groceries and the things that you need. So you begin to channel in the right way. Remember, at the beginning, I talked about education, food, housing, and health. Those, for us, are key elements of how you can make this impact. Yes, there is discretionary, and we know that individuals will like, but we don't believe that we should foster that, and instead try to foster some other channels into that.
Yeah, and I think also, I think the hard part of countries like Guatemala is that because cards haven't penetrated in terms of issuance or acceptance in that situation, you're almost relegated out of the banking system or out of the financial system because you do have to work in cash. And so anything you can do to try to create a greater degree of comfort with electronic payments as opposed to cash payments. And to your point, starting with a virtual card and beginning to use it at Walmart in Guatemala, I think allows the consumer to get comfortable with that form of payment and then maybe begin to change behavior in a way that ultimately brings more consumer protection. Money moves more quickly, less prone to nefarious things or robbery or theft or all those terrible things. And so sort of by use of the Paysend process, you really are sort of inherently bringing it is a new form of inclusion. I mean, the Paysend process is creating inclusion. Would that be fair to say?
Exactly. And we're not doing it alone. We're doing it with the partners, and with the support of the government, and with the support of the local government as well, and with the support of central payments as our partner institution, because most of the funds will be generated from the US. So what it means is we will be working to allow those funds to be uploaded, and therefore we are already working together with you about the limits that everyone has and the different uh, uh, elements that you have to provide in order to control the risk and who are you, the so-called know your client or KYC. But when you go even to the other side, institutions that we're working with in the partnership are providing education. It's about sitting together and telling the story. You can now receive the funds. That card is secure. That card doesn't get lost. The money is there. Don't worry. Go to an institution. Today is Walmart. Hopefully, in the future, there will be many others that can accept this. It's a matter of process and a time. But to put it in context, we're doing this for the North Triangle, it's called, which is Honduras, Guatemala, and Salvador. We're going to run it also as freemium as possible, trying to negotiate or agree that all the fees are removed, and we're learning from it. This could be a model that we can take to other markets where not necessarily has to be at cost, but we can learn from this. It's about providing, again, a virtual card initially. We have to understand how they use their phones. We have to understand if they have the right phone for it. So Google comes into play with their Android phones, and then Microsoft comes into play with the broadband. And it's a combination. But hospitals is another element that we've been talking, and schools. In Guatemala, they can receive. They are merchants for some reason. I mean, they can conceive. They might not accept today, but they could eventually accept. So we can expand that acceptance network slowly in the right elements of place.
It'll be very interesting to watch, to your point, in other areas of the world. I mean, I think about Africa, for example, where a model like this could be particularly interesting as well, especially as Africa begins to really change itself in terms of, it's embracing fintech. It's quickly becoming, on the forefront of understanding, like, we might just skip the old economy and go right into fintech because that's really best suited for our infrastructure. And I think your point around the infrastructure needs is critically important as well. It takes everybody to make an electronic payment work. It's a lot more than the payment rail that it's running on. It takes the device, it takes the network, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly, and it's a process with the smallest steps. And also the commitment of companies. I think more and more we are all understanding that we can do well by doing good. It's just a matter of how we approach our business models. Remittances, which is where we work across the world, it's interesting to see for many of the institutions around the world, it's an income on their P&L. They charge to receive the funds. They charge you to get access to your money that your relatives send you. And it's an income, and they make significant amount of that. Well, we're breaking that. We're saying, nope, that's not the model. The model should be, if you can bring them into the economy, if you can have them to have a vehicle, then you can use the networks or Visa, MasterCard, or others, and you can win in the interchange. You can win in the other way, but don't take it precisely from that, which is limited. I mean, I don't think one can send today in the traditional model $10 because they will charge you 12.
No chance, right?
Exactly.
And I think you bring up an excellent point. I mean, it seems so counterintuitive, yet in this space, in the remittance space, it has always been around making your money off access. Right, I'm going to charge you to get to your money, as opposed to in electronic forms of payment. Now all of a sudden I don't need to do that because now all of a sudden usage is becoming the opportunity, the revenue opportunity. And you mentioned interchange and that sort of thing. So all of a sudden it's not on the backs of, in this case, in many cases, very low income folks who, the only way to make it work was for them to pay to just get access. And it just seems so revolutionary, frankly, and it's been so needed in this space to let usage drive the economic value and not access.
And spread the cost around many more actors, not just one individual who is going to have access to their own money, but in this case, the merchants that accept it, the networks that sponsor it. There are many, many more that will be part of that equation. So that's one element. I see, you mentioned Africa. I see that leapfrog is going to happen. We do believe. We want to continue innovating at Paysend. We want to continue being a good player in that innovation. We are very fan of the incubators. I had the opportunity to visit your incubator center in Sioux Falls. I believe we have to do a lot more in that. We all have to contribute in one another. That's where talent is going to be created. That is where new models are going to be developed. That's what learning lessons are going to be experienced, and hopefully will benefit quite a bit. So Africa will probably leapfrog. There is a lot of movement in the telco companies now acquiring or requiring a banking license, so they might get into that. But I won't be surprised that also in the US, there could be a number of things. Our system continues to be a little bit slow and a little bit outdated because, of course, the rails already exist and they are right there. So we could also see some innovation here. Might take some more time. It's not as necessary. We are well penetrated in the financial systems, but still it's very expensive to invest money. It's very expensive to retire. It's very expensive to know how you can extend your retirement for the many years that we all live now, thanks to medicine. So we have to do more with less. There's no other question.
And I'm glad you mentioned the U.S. because as I look back at when our relationship with Paysend started, and I first met Abdul, and I said, one of the charges we had from the very beginning here at Central Payments was we have got to make financial experiences better for all consumers, and we've got to expand this reach that our bank, Central Bank of Kansas City, has always had in its small metropolitan footprint in Kansas City. But how do we continue to serve this consumer? And I when we first heard the Paysend model, I said, this is a great example of us extending our commitment to financial inclusion and our commitment to financial literacy and our commitment to low-cost financial services much more broadly than what we could have ever done. And I think that was one of the reasons why when we met Paysend, I said we have to do this one. This works well. And I think the other thing I'll mention, I look back at as we looked at our OpenCP platform, the API platform that I think is serving you well, and we have endless ideas of how we can continue to serve you in more ways. But, to your point, your model is trying to connect so many rails and payment networks and trying to find every way possible for funds to get from the U.S., as an example, to 100 plus companies. And you can't do that with a commitment to just one rail because the system is too fragmented. And I think it was really, we looked at what we could do for you and say, look, let's connect as many rails as possible so Paysend can use us to get access to whatever the preferred method of transfer happens to be.
Exactly. And we will continue to do that because now let's take this P2P, which has been part of our conversation. We know it's a significant, very large global market, into the B2B. Because big corporations, they still use the financial system as it is. They don't mind paying SWIFT fair rates. The system takes 2-3 days. There is a reason why they benefit from it. We all know. Treasury departments know how to do that very well. But when you think about small and medium enterprises, then becomes a challenge. It's a difficulty. Now, it's the same in a way. We can take our experience from a P2P and develop APIs, which we are currently working to bring a solution that you can pay your suppliers overseas, that you can collect your sales, that you can pay your employers, that you can in a way manage your treasury in a more efficient way by opening many different methods of payment. And make it as instant and as freemium as possible as well.
And I think you're exactly right. And that's one of the things where we get very excited about Paysend, not just in our ability to support your business model, but looking at ways that we can embed Paysend into our model so that we can bring the ability to move funds to your point in a freemium environment to other clients that we have that are still, to your point, relying on slow, very expensive processes. And in many cases, I see opportunities for us to bring low-cost international remittance solutions through our Paysend connectivity, bringing it to other clients who want the functionality in whatever their program happens to be, whether it's a consumer program, a small business program, a remittance, or a disbursement program. There's always going to be a need to want to move money internationally. And the rails historically have been slow and very expensive and very cash oriented. So the one thing we love about Paysend is the ability to sort of retrofit it back into our business model and then become a bit of a reseller as well.
And we will love that. We see that extension coming. Yes, we have built, but at some point we are also beginning to value that the partnership is as important as building our own capabilities, because they would only work well if they connect an open platform. We call it the Paysend Open Platform. Recently, we were saying, no, it should be an open payments network, not even Paysend. It should be connected to any. We are just going to be a contributor. Investing on our people, investing on the talent, investing on the relationships to be able to make it good. So in general, it's a combination of different elements that will get us there. And we see that as a next phase in which we continue to expand our partnerships. I like not to, like you said, we have to work with everyone to provide as many solutions as possible, learn from each other, be honest in the way we operate, be simple. We are just recently opened our office in Miami. This is the office for the Americas. We're going to bring some talent to work from here. This is where I'm located right now. It's for the Americas because it will cover Canada all the way to Chile. But it also provides the opportunity to balance our UK global headquarters in terms of providing the different solutions that we have. We are work remote first, but we also believe in the hubs. I like to call it, people used to do offsites to think about it strategically. Now we do insights.
On sites, yeah.
Yeah, when people come to the office, we think strategically, and then you go and you do the work, whatever you wanted to do it, at home or in wherever you live. So now we have a place to come and dream together.
And I think you mentioned earlier a little bit about false fintech, and Nikki and I talk about this all the time. We love to bring in startups that are thinking about new ways of attacking, old problems, if you will. And I think one of the things we get excited about as we look at startups, early stage startups that are thinking about remittances is, it's all about the reach. It's about the reach in areas of the world where, it is hard to connect very divergent payment networks and make it work in a way that connects to as many consumers as possible. And I think one of the things we're going to begin to see, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, are the ways in which companies are, sort of combining rails or networks, if you will, and then utilizing, in some cases, maybe not even non-financial rails in order to just expand reach in those areas of the world where the infrastructure just hasn't been there like it has been in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly, I think is the integration and collaboration that will need to happen across. We're going to see institutions that are not necessarily financial services opening eventually their platform for what might be required in order for new solutions to come to play. I'm beginning to see it in the Central America partnership in a little way, but it will come into other places as well. Something that I would like also to highlight when I think about your incubation center for fintechs is that, and the opportunity of this podcast, sharing what we know, being able to talk about it, opening to ideas and suggestions, it will make all of us greater in many, many ways. It is something that That's why I believe our partnership is so strong and is continued to grow stronger. We were new when we came 2 years ago. You believed on us. We deliver. We are together doing an amazing things together. And it's only getting us to now start creating and building and providing to others. I would love to open our platform and white label it to a solution that may come. Let's let it have it. Let's go all together. That is going to be greater for everyone. And our business models allows that. We continue to be a fintech. We continue to run at a very low cost. We want to remain that way. We want to remain in a way that we don't absorb overheads and over expenses, because at the end of the day, we're providing a service that we believe on it.
Of course. Last thought, and we should have touched on this earlier, but I'll touch on it now. To take an early stage company like Paysend, who wants to move money around the world as quickly as possible, and then to marry that with a bank partner here in the U.S. that, it's no surprise, heavily regulated, and we all understand that. It takes a special type of collaboration to try to be able to solve your insistence on speed and your insistence on low cost with the baggage, if you will, that comes along with being a bank in the U.S. And I think, I look at the example, between Central Payments and Paysend as one and where the compliance folks, they sit in a room, they collaborate, they figure out ways to do it in a way that, protects us from the requirements on us, but still stays true oftentimes or still absolutely stays true to your mission of fast and freemium.
Yeah, we did align on our values. I believe that was critical at the beginning. We had our hiccups, which is normal as we understand and learn from it. But we have collected a number of successes that have developed trust. So and from that trust, we are beginning to co-create, and the journey continues and continues very, very strong in that. But there was values that brought us together. There was a belief, a little bit of course, I don't know you, you don't know me, but let's try to believe in each other. Transparency, all that has collaborated. I've been talking to your team about we would love to be error-free. That is a goal that is, we know how difficult it is to achieve. But what I can commit is that if a mistake happens, it doesn't repeat, and that the recovery is as quick as possible. That's what I can commit to it.
And look, I think that's the recipe of successful. We talk about it all the time here on this podcast, the successful recipe of fintech bank partnerships. And I think when it's transparent, collaborative, and you're not afraid to admit your mistakes, and then everybody sort of learns from it, that's how it works. And I think it's been great. It's a great example here. Jairo, I just have to thank you for joining us. I know this has been a long time, and we've wanted you on this podcast for a long time. And I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank you for everything Paysend is doing all over the world. And look, we're just so happy to be supporting it, and we're very excited about what the next 3 or 4 years. We're announcing that we extended our contract with you earlier than required, because we're so excited about how this is going. We want to make sure this partnership lasts for many years into the future.
Thank you so much. The gratitude is reciprocal. We believe in what's coming is even greater than we have done, and let's do it for our customers. At the end of the day, they need us. We need them. We all can do great things together. Thank you for hosting me. Wish you the best in this podcast. I've been listening to them, and I will have become a companion in my free time when I take walks around.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jairo. Have a great rest of your day, and it's really happy to have you on the podcast.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much.
All right. There you have it. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Fintech Brews and News. Keep up with all the content and cool stuff happening at Falls Fintech and Central Payments by checking out our website, our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss out on our next episode.
I'm Nikki Rohde.
And I'm Trent Sorbe. See you next time.
Cheers.